The name of a poor Chinese street food vendor, Xia Junfeng, has remained one of the most hotly searched for and discussed topics in China's online community over the past few days. And that's because a Supreme Court refusal to overturn a lower court's death sentence resulted in this father of one being executed in the northeastern city of Shenyang on Wednesday. Xia had been convicted of the murder of two urban management officials, known more colloquially as Chengguan, back in 2009. These sort of para-police are tasked with enforcing city bylaws and regularly come into conflict with street vendors. Xia's supporters and family claim he was beaten by the officers and then dragged away to an office. The urban management office denied any such violence. When Xia was alone with three officers, he says he took out a small fruit knife he carried and stabbed all of them, killing two of them, but he claimed he was being beaten and his action was in self-defense. The Chengguan said there was no provocation. The court decided to believe the officials, and Xia was convicted by the Shenyang Intermediate People's Court. When the Supreme Court approved the conviction and sentence, Xia's family made a last-ditch appeal, saying questions about the prosecution's submission to the Supreme Court had not been answered, but the appeal was rejected. Now, this case has sparked off a huge amount of online anger, with many net users believing that the case highlights a fundamental bias against the poor and powerless within China's legal system. Well, to hear some of those online opinions, let's now join our researcher Esther Dung in the newsroom. Well, Esther, as I mentioned, a lot of anger about this case, and despite recent official warnings about expressing oneself too freely online, it seems net users haven't been holding back in this case, have they?
Well, you are right. Of course, Xia Junfeng's story has been widely reported by Chinese press over the past 4 years, and his wife Zhang Jing has continuously kept people up to date about her husband's case on her Weibo microblogging account. These posts have been widely read and reposted, and some of the reaction may be due to the unexpected nature of this decision. A lot of people presumed Xia wouldn't be executed after two other urban management officers involved in the case were found to have lied to the court back in 2011. So the news of Xia's execution shocked and angered many posters. Comments such as "to hell with this court" and a lot stronger than that, which I can't repeat here, are everywhere, even on the side of the Shenyang court that ordered it. And as you mentioned, many posters are convinced that this clearly shows what they see as double standards in China's judicial system. This poster says on voachinese.com. It's all because the people he killed were urban management officers. If it was the officers who killed Xia, they wouldn't have been executed because they are the law. And this comment from a Fujian-based poster has got support from over 36,000 posters on 163.com. I just want to know what happened to the urban management officer who killed a street vendor with a metal weight in Hunan, and what happened to those officers who stamped on a street vendor's head in Shanxi. But there are also a certain number of posters who see this as an eye for an eye and point out that Xia wasn't the only one to die here. For example, this poster asks on ChinaNews.com, what about the other two families? Have people ever considered whether it would be fair for them who lost their sons if Xia weren't executed? But even some who don't oppose this sentence have questions about fairness or the lack of it in handing down death penalties. This comment is from dwnews.com. The judicial system is supposed to be independent and not affected by public opinion. I'm not against the death sentence for Xia, but I'm really curious as to why he was executed, but so many top corrupt officials are not.
Now, as we said, there have been many questions about the conduct of the trial made by Xia's supporters, at least, and also by ordinary net users. Have you seen many comments on this aspect of it all?
Yes, sure. Lots of posters indeed have plenty of questions and plenty of doubts about how the trial and the execution were managed. I'll just give you a few examples of this based on what I've seen. First, the majority of users are extremely angry with reports that the court refused to let witnesses who wanted to testify for Xia to do so. Xia's wife Zhang Jing has repeatedly told the media that they had 6 witnesses who could prove that Xia Junfeng was bitten and he was therefore just defending himself. but she said the court would not hear their testimony. And this poster, Gong Shengli, has this to say. Xia's family had witnesses to support their case, but the court ignored that. And then, based on their own evidence, they gave Xia a death sentence. Is this what's meant the principle, everybody is equal before the law? And this poster also asks, why didn't the court allow some witnesses to appear in court? And what is the exact definition of self-defense in our law? And there are even questions about the treatment of Xia's remains. This comes from Weibo.com and reads, Xia's family didn't even have the chance to see his body, just cremated the ashes. We can't help asking, what did they do with Xia's body? And I just like to add here that the reaction isn't just restricted to mainland China. A well-known Taiwan singer and actress Annie Eno felt so strongly about this case that he has offered to adopt Xia's son as her own and his widow as her sister and see that they are looked after financially.
Okay, Esther, now this is, in the end, another tragic outcome of these conflicts between people trying to eke out a living, street vendors and these city management officials, these chengguan, whose task is to police them. Anything been said about this seemingly never-ending battle?
Right. Conflict or even killings involving chengguan and street vendors have become all too common in Chinese cities in recent years. But in most cases, net users see the vendors as the victims. And I have to say, very few people have a positive attitude towards chengguan. First, have a listen to Deng Ziqing. I have to say, not many people know much about the law, and their anger towards Xia's execution is to some degree due to their sympathy with this vulnerable group. After all, in all the conflicts between chengguan and vendors, the latter are usually those who suffer the most. And Chu Chaoxin, a reporter for the Southern Weekend newspaper, has this to say. I've reported on such conflicts many times. In some, the chengguan were killed. In others, the street vendors died. I once interviewed a chengguan and he said, if we don't deal with these vendors, we lose our job. So of course, we'd rather they lose their job. Nowadays, in order to make cities look nice, street vendors are banned. I'm so sad that the so-called appearance of a city comes ahead of our people's right to make a living. For officials, a nice, neat city helps their career. But what about the lives of the vendors? They never bothered to think about that. And finally, I'd like to finish up with this take on ChinaNews.com. The social problems and conflicts in today's China are perfectly reflected in Xia's case. It's high time our government dealt with the huge gap between rich and poor and the imbalance in relations between the ordinary people and those in power.
Okay, thanks for that, Esther. And that was China Take researcher Esther Deng with online reaction to that execution on Wednesday of street vendor Xia Junfeng and the anger that it seems to have caused in many social circles, or certainly online here in China. Next up on China Take, some of the top trending phrases on China's most popular search engines.